Hello, my name is Bernard Trottier, Member of Parliament for Etobicoke Lakeshore, and welcome to In the Hot Seat, your opportunity to ask me questions and my opportunity to answer them for you. This is the video companion to the Lakeshore Link, my connection with you in the riding and to other concerned people in Canada who might want to hear from a Member of Parliament on issues of the day. First of all, let me mention it's Happy Movember, in case you're wondering about the facial hair. I'm growing my beard to do some fundraising in support of men's health in general, and specifically prostate cancer awareness and prevention. If you'd like to donate, you're welcome to do so at www.ca.movember.com. If you look up my name, you can make a donation for this worthy cause. So some questions that I received in the past couple of weeks I'd like to answer. The first one is about food safety, which has been in the news quite a lot. And it's a question from Bill from New Toronto, who asks, after the last E. coli scare with beef, how can I serve my family and be sure the food I am buying is safe? Are Canadian food safety standards up to par? I'm happy to say, Bill, that they are. So actually, if you think of the statistics over the past few years when it comes to food safety, the situation is getting better and better, despite little crises, well, not some call them significant crises over the last few years that we've been able to deal with. Specifically when it comes to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which is an independent body of government, making sure that food is kept safe. We try to depoliticize food inspections as much as possible and making sure that they're able to operate independently. Recently, the CFIA has hired 700 new inspectors, including 170 meat inspectors. And some of this was in response to the listeriosis scare a few years ago. And there was a commission put in place to examine some of the shortcomings and came up with an exhaustive set of reports with 57 recommendations, and those were implemented recently. But then also this week, there was a new bill that we passed in the House of Commons, Bill S11, the Food Safety for Canadians Act, and I'm pleased to say that those measures are put in place to make sure that our food system remains safe and intact. And some of the measures in that bill include food traceability throughout the supply chain, also enforced fines and enhancement of some of the enforcement mechanisms that the CFIA has. So I'm pleased to say that we're moving forward with some concrete measures to make sure that food remains safe for all Canadians. Now the second question comes from Catherine from Islington Village, who's asking about climate change, which comes up a lot, especially over the last decade or so. But every week there's more developments on that front. And her question is, I'm very concerned about climate change. What are you doing to make sure Canada reduces carbon dioxide emissions? So I've had frequent discussions with the Environment Minister and with the Minister of Natural Resources. In fact, it's an issue that touches all of government, and we need to make sure that we're doing our part. The Conservative government's approach to carbon dioxide emissions is to look at the big sectors, which are mainly power generation and transportation to start with, but then looking at other sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture and making sure that we've got measures in place that do reduce carbon dioxide emissions but don't cripple those important aspects of the economy. Another general principle when it comes to carbon dioxide management is making sure that whatever we do in terms of international frameworks include the large emitters, the countries like China and India, which actually produce a lot more carbon dioxide than a country like Canada. And so it's important that they be involved, otherwise whatever we do would not have no real impact on a global basis. I should add also that when it comes to something like a carbon tax, that's something we're not in favor of. It has been discussed over the years, and one of the main reasons we're not in favor of that is it really affects the people who can least afford it. If you think about it, carbon is something that goes significantly into the food chain that we discussed earlier, and that means that groceries would be going up in price quite significantly if that were done. Also people's gas bills when they just need to get to work and drive their families around. It really affects certain families much more than others, and so it's really not a fair tax. It's actually fairly regressive, so something we don't support. I should also add, by the way, that carbon tax would amount, as proposed by the official opposition, the NDP, would amount to about $21.5 billion is what they've calculated, which would be a big drain on Canadian families if you think about it, and would only actually cover some of the budget items that they've been asking for, which amount to a lot more than that. So we're being very economically and fiscally conservative, making sure that what we do has an impact, but also doesn't cripple the economy, because we do need those jobs to keep moving forward. Now the next question I have, it came from Robert in Mimico, and has to do with trade. and specifically the Canada-European Free Trade Agreement that's being discussed right now and negotiated. And his question is, the government seems very intent on negotiating a free trade deal with Europe. I understand this will increase the price of prescription drugs. Why is the government doing this? Great question. It's been in the news a lot, and I can't give you anything specific at this point on the patent protection for pharmaceutical drugs. It's something that's part of the mix. Obviously, we're going to do a free trade deal with Europe because it's important, but we'll do it in the best interest of Canadians. Let me just say a couple things very generally about trade. Is that Canada is a small country. We've got about the 36th largest population, but despite that, we've got the 10th largest economy. So obviously, we don't just rely on our internal market. We need trade for us to be prosperous, and so that's why we're actively pursuing trade agreements. We also need to diversify our trade so that we're not too reliant just on the United States, which has its own challenges. Now, Europe is an enormous market and with a lot of potential for Canadian exports as well as imports. And trade, in general, increases the outcomes for both partners. Now, with respect to the specific Canada-European trade agreement, it's estimated that that would increase our gross domestic product, i.e. the size of our economy, by about $12 billion, which would be a significant impact. That would be about 80,000 jobs and would increase the average income for Canadian households by about $1,000. So a significant opportunity. That's why we're moving ahead, and we're going to be doing this with more countries also. And it's really, for Canada to be successful in the world, we need to compete and to be a trading nation, as we always have been throughout our history, but even more so going forward. So thank you once again for your questions. I look forward to talking to you soon.